Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Anarita Bishaliva, along with co-host. Co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Shrey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you're joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any questions for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Professor Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким поклоном. Ми свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett. Thank you.
Thank you, Anara. We are honored to welcome again the regular guest on our program, Alik Gomelsky from Toronto, Canada, who is a historian, prolific writer, historian of Ukrainian-Jewish relationships in 19th and 20th centuries. Alik debunks a lot of stereotyped myths, many promulgated by Russian-Soviet-KGB imperial-colonial narrative. His book, Jewish-Ukrainian Relations, the 20th Century, recently made it into a short list of the Canadian Peterson Literary Prize. He will be talking again about Avraam Shifrin, the very famous man of amazing faith, unwavering will, and publicist, Zionist, prisoner of Gulag for 10 years. Research of Mr. Gomelsky focused on Avraam Shifrin and his work, his activism, way beyond USSR and Israel. Please, Alik, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, my dear friends. Glad to see you again. Last February, I talked about this amazing person that Victor mentioned, Avraam Shifrin. On this upcoming Sunday, October 8th, Avraam Shifrin will turn exactly 100 years old. This date is important to me because I'm now analyzing and classifying his personal archive. In general, when I hear the word archive, I instantly think of a poem by our host, Victor Fett, dedicated to the archivist, and is called There Is a Time. Today, I really want to tell you about different archives and their contents. Documents can lie for years and decades as dead weights, ballasts in the hold of a galleons-type library, which silently plows lakes of mysteries, seas of secrets, oceans of history. The task of any historian is to force this ballast, which is not a ballast at all, but a real supply of gunpowder and cannonballs to stir up and revive the world, to make people think and sometimes completely change their views on events and personalities and understand process hidden from us. First of all, I would like to list the main archives, in addition to naturally Shifrin's archive that I worked with to help me with writing my books, articles, and essays. I start with the classified SBU archives of KGB and USSR, a declassified CIA archive, an OUN archive, the classified NATO archive, materials of the US Senate, the classified FBI archives, materials of the Nuremberg Tribunal, and German Bundesarchive, and also the archive of Vladimir Bukovsky. To name a few. To avoid any speculation, I'm purposely using only open sources, and also I'm publicating any documents or artifacts that came to my possession. Okay, now about the archive of Avraam Shifrin. Shortly after arriving in Israel, Shifrin met with Nehemiah Lebanon, the head of the Aliyah program, Nativ, an Israeli state organization subordinated to the office of the head of government, which was created to coordinate the struggle for the right to repatriation and immigration Jews to Israel. From Lebanon, Shifrin learned that Nativ was planning to send him, Shifrin, to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in order to organize and manage illegal contacts with the USSR, Jews in the USSR. Shifrin, of course, agreed. In addition to this position, Shifrin was also offered a post of director for the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration. It's also known as the Ministry of Absorption, as well as the internship in the law offices of the then Justice Minister, Chaim Tzadok. Thanks to the insight and analytical skills of this former criminal investigator who had spent 10 years in Gulag, Shifrin quickly realized that he was being violently deceived in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, whose officials were saying one thing but were doing something completely different. For example, once he discovered that the correspondence being sent to his trusted people in the USSR was going through the official channels, via Soviet Postal Service, which means, of course, that all mails was going through the KGB hands. At the time, Avraam started his own war against the USSR. His efforts were not supported by the government, but in that fight, he was not alone. In Shifrin archive and other archives, I had found materials about Yakov Suslensky, a Soviet dissident, human rights activist, Zionist. For his participation in the anti-Soviet movement, he spent 7 years from 1970 to 1977 in Gulag. After this, his release from the prison, he was immigrated to Israel. Shortly before his death in 2009, a gathering was held to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Society of Ukrainian-Jewish Relations, during which Suslensky explained the relations and reasons behind the founding of this organization, because he was the founder. I would like to quote, "Soviet prisons were mostly filled with the so-called Ukrainian nationalists and Zionists. There were normal relations between us. There was mutual aid. It was the Ukrainians who came to defense of the Jews. A few times they simply saved my life, and one does not forget this." End of citation. End of quote. I will now read another fragment of the memoirs of the distinguished Soviet dissident Vladimir Bukovsky, in which he talks particularly about Suslensky, because they spent time together in camps. I quote, "This was our method of fighting the leadership. We wrote thousands of complaints. Well, we wrote standard complaints, but Yasha," means Yakov Suslensky, "could not think simply. First of all, he chose an addressee, the famous female swineherd Yefrosinya Porosyonkina. Her surname means piglet in Russian. With that kind of name, she was member of Verkhovny Soviet, hero of socialist labor, and swineherd. And the whole time he was writing complaints to her. For this, he was jailed on charges of making unacceptable statements in complaints. And each time it was a problem. Yakov in jail. He has a bad heart. We have to announce a hunger strike. We begged him, Yasha, please write ordinary complaints. What do you need from this Yefrosinya Porosyonkina? But no, he couldn't. That was boring for him. He was quite a fellow. He was freed. Then he left for Israel. There he founded a society for Ukrainian-Jewish relations and actively developed it, invited former Ukrainian prisoners to Israel, and traveled to Ukraine. He did the thing right because a certain pattern had emerged, a stereotype that all Ukrainians are anti-Semites, which was absolutely untrue. Outraged by this, he decided to combat this stereotype. The whole time he kept devising stuff, doing something, campaigning, and like that. End of quote. I would like to show you, let me know if it looks okay, The picture of Yakov Suslensky is here, and Avraam Shifrin. They
A little bit higher. Just hold it just a little bit. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So it's Suslensky and it's Shifrin in Israel. Yeah. Okay, going forward. In own archive, I have found the transcript of the evening of the Ukrainian-Jewish Solidarity, organized by Public Committee of the Jewish-Ukrainian Cooperation in Jerusalem on October 31st, 1979. It's interesting that not many people knew about existence of such committee, of such organization. So, quote, when I was already, it's quote by Yakov Suslensky, his speech. When I was already completely motionless, losing consciousness and memory, being a semi-insane state after a long stay in cell, Zinovy Antoniuk and Grigory Prihodko, who were seriously ill by themselves, carried me in their arms to the promenade. These people, after lifting me back to the third floor, instantly fell unconscious. I told them, guys, save yourself. It's over for me. I can't get out. But they steadily continued to take me for walks every single day. Ukrainians, like Jews, are divided into political parties and are often very hostile to each other. But in the matter of friendship and cooperation with Jews, all Ukrainian organizations whose representatives I met are united. One of the leaders told me, for the first time in many years, we are sitting at the same table in the same hall. What made us come together with our political opponents was a shared desire to improve relations with the Jewish people. We have no reason for enmity. The Ukrainian and Jewish people can and should cooperate the fight together. I replied that we are ready to cooperate with all Ukrainian organizations. For us, there is a Ukrainian people with whom the Jewish people would like to establish good relations. I must say that the initiative of such cooperation comes from Ukrainians. They have been making similar proposals to our predecessors for several years, but for a long time things did not get along. Cooperation between Jews and Ukrainians is a knife to the heart of the Soviets. This was also helped in the struggle of Jews for immigration to Israel and also to Ukrainians in their national aspirations. Yeah, quote ends. During the federal panel that I mentioned before, Avraam decided to organize the unbelievable. He arranged to secretly film camps, prisons, and closed-off psychiatrist hospitals in the USSR to produce documentary that would be screened all around the world. This documentary, which was named Prison Land, showed the outside and even inside of these places. The incredible footage also showed punishment cells, prison courtyards, prisoners that included and were not limited to women and children, transport of prisoners under escort and guards. It also featured appearances of former Soviet political prisoners, including, of course, Avraam himself, also Aria Vudka, Reza Palatnik, and others, who gave the explanation of the places they had several spent their sentences. The footage is horrifying in its persuasiveness, and the people risking their freedom and their lives filmed these shots for their everlasting credit. I would like to show you the document that I found in archive. I believe you can see. Not everybody of you can understand the text because it's in Russian, but it's actually a description of the film that Avraam Shifrin prepared back, I believe, in 70s. I don't have the dates here, but it's back 70s. Yeah, and also amazing map. The dots, tell me if you can see it. The dots here, it's
a little bit, just a little bit higher.
Yeah. The dots on this map of the Soviet Union, it's the prisons and camps. Wow. You can imagine. Yeah. and also some pictures. As you can see, it's the escorts that's going, and this is the psychiatrist clinic, as you can see. Yeah. Prison land once was sent to the Belgrade Conference of Human Rights, which took place in 1978. Over the next 10 years, prison land was the only documentary evidence of the Soviet penitentiary system. It was screened on 25 of the most watched television channels in some of the largest countries in the world. Special screenings for politicians were held in the parliaments of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. In Denmark, prison land was screened twice in the month on the main television channel, and the second screening was billed as the best program of the month. Unfortunately, not many people know about the existence of this film anymore. Luckily, AIHPS, which stands for Association of International History and Political Science, which I recently founded, is now in possession of such documentary, along with the enormous amount of photographs, testimonials, maps, etc. We also have now declassified by SBU special announcement that Fedorchuk, the chief of the Ukrainian KGB, sent to Sherbitsky, the leader of the Communist Party of Ukraine, on August 9, 1973. I quote, Shifrin assigned the shooting of the film about prisons, camps for prisoners, and psychiatrist hospitals in Moscow, Odessa, Karaganda, Potma, and other places. For this purpose, he was provided with the portable camera and supply of film. Shifrin intends for this film, which would reflect the living conditions of prisoners in Soviet Union, to be screened overseas and to obtain a big reward for it from the United States Information Agency. End quote. The last phrase here, which states that Shifrin intends for it to be screened overseas and to obtain a big reward for it, is actually a case of disinformation, because this was not a commercial venture, but a human rights project. The same document has another very interesting passage. I quote, overseas, Shifrin is conducting active anti-Soviet work, and for this purpose is establishing extensive contacts with representatives of foreign anti-Soviet centers and organizations, as well as the enemy's intelligence services. In addition to his explicit speeches and delusional ideas that are hostile to our country, he is adopting measures for the repatriation of a number of subversive action, preparation of the number of subversive actions aimed at the massive illegal dumping of anti-Soviet literature and dispatching of his emissaries to the territory of the USSR for the purpose of collecting slanderous and other type of information. According to Shifrin, the Maoist organization, which unites Soviet emigres who had been convicted of various crimes, has become an international organization, but its popularity in Israel and other capitalist countries is insignificant due to lack of funds and crucial assistance from the official circles in Israel. He steered the agent toward the crucial need for contacts with Ukrainian nationalists and other anti-Soviet elements, at the same time emphasizing that the most active in terms of their public statements are Ukrainian nationalists abroad, with whom he has established close links. Shifrin introduced the agent to the decided on a future further possible meeting with the Ukrainian nationalist Stepan Mudryk, who instructed him about joint anti-Soviet actions of Zionists and Ukrainian nationalists. End quote. I'd like now to point your attention to the KGB outright lies about the Maoists. In reality, members of Maoists were not criminals, but former political prisoners in the Soviet Union. Of particular interest are the following KGB documents declassified by Security Service of Ukraine. This special report dated July 17, 1972, and Fedorchuk memorandum to the Central Committee of Communist Party. This is from the Communist Party. This from the Communist Party, Ukraine, dated July 23. The later document is veritable masterpiece that presents Sherbitsky with a plan of special measures, including dispatching of KGB agent with career growth to infiltrate Mao's structure for the purpose of, quoting, localizing Shifrin's supremely extremist actions and implementing a plan to disrupt the mass smuggling of anti-Soviet literature plotted by an enemy of the USSR. End of quote. The plan also projected the capture of the executors of this operation and the confiscation of smuggled literature and special equipment. The special report is entirely devoted to the activities of Mao's and especially Shifrin's undertaking. This remarkable document is an outlandish blend of utter fantasy and stupidity. Notwithstanding the KGB statements of contrary, Mao's, which was a civic organization, had never planned or carried out any, I quote, terrorist or sabotaging actions. Furthermore, Mao's had never planned to blow up buildings of Soviet missions in the United States or West Germany. These KGB documents thus acknowledged that Shifrin, who was an invalid after the Second World War, by that time one of his legs has already been amputated, was a staunch opponent of the USSR, and revealed that Mao's organization, which subsisted on private donations, was slated to be infiltrated by secret agents. In my view, this is the highest possible performance rating that could be given to Shifrin and Mao's. So what is this large and terrible organization known as Mao's? In Hebrew, Mao's means fortress. It was the first civic organization in Israel to launch the struggle for Aliyah from the Soviet Union. Its founder, Shabtai Bezalel Beit Tzvi, spent several years in Soviet prisons for his Zionist activities. Arriving in Israel and after spending his adult life working on the archives of the Jewish Agency in Tel Aviv, he realized that the main goal of Zionism must be to ensure the free immigration of Jews from the Soviet Union to Israel. He actually founded Mao's, and it was Aid Society for Soviet Jews in 1958. Its mission was to put pressure on the Israeli government, whose policy of not intervention and so-called quiet diplomacy only worsened the plights of Jews in the USSR and did nothing to help abolish Soviet government ban on the immigration to Israel. For many years, this small organization was the first and only civic group in Israel that was fighting for Aliyah from the Soviet Union. In 1968, the organization was headed by Golda Yelin, a native of Kherson, Ukraine. The slogan of Mao's and its program were derived from the Torah, Shalach et Ami, which means let my people go. In 1969, Mao's chose as its emblem and poster that was designated by New Immigrant, an artist by the name of Yosef Kuskovsky. The poster depicted the exhausted, angry face of the prisoner behind barbed wire in the form of sickle and hammer and traditional symbol of the USSR. I will show this poster. Tell me, please, if you can see it. Yeah?
Yes, maybe just a little bit higher, just a little bit higher. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, so we can see sickle and hammer, and this is poster. On the opposite side, it's written in Russian, the same story about Mao's. Yeah. The story of this illustration quite interesting. Sometimes after the artist's death, when the exhibit of Kuskovsky artworks were being organized, a high-ranking official from Israeli Foreign Ministry spotted the poster with the words "Let my people go" and ordered its immediately removed. The poster was removed, but the public found out about it because a journalist from the newspaper Mari had secretly photographed the illustration, which had great accusatory power, and published it, of course. That's why they knew. I also would like to show you the previous poster that has been produced by Maus. Same story, and it's a nice picture, I believe, by Maimon, and it's called Marans, which is probably interesting stuff because of the history of Jewish people in Spain. Maoz, in fact, was no more than a dozen Jews, an organization without an apparatus, without funds, without its own building, without Congress. Yet, this handful of Jews smashed every record in Israel by shaking up all the country's main policy implementing institutions. Here's a few highlights. In 1964, Maoz launched a multi-year campaign called Kes al-Domi, which called on Jewish people to place an empty chair at the table on the evening of Passover Seder to show a solidarity with the Soviet Jews. Every year, the organization distributed posters to Jewish communities throughout the world, which totaled about 5,000 addresses. This campaign was supported in the United States, Great Britain, Australia, and other countries, but unfortunately not in Israel. Also, in 1964, Maoz organized a national campaign to collect signatures for petition to be submitted to the Knesset, demanding that Israeli parliament focus their attention on the plight of Jews in the USSR and take active steps to get the Soviet government to approve decision allowing the free repatriation of people to Israel. The petition was signed by 100,000 people, proving that a large segment of Israel population felt solidarity with Jews in Soviet Union, but the Knesset ignored the petition and its signatories. In August 1966, Moscow State Circus did a tour in Israel. The first show took place in Ramat Gan. Coincidentally or not, but on these days marking the 14th anniversary of the Stalinist regime brutal reprisals against Jewish writers and artists of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee. But it's never occurred to any Israeli officials that it would be benefiting to hold a memorial evening in honor of the innocent members of the Jewish intelligentsia who perished in the USSR. During these days, mourning Israelis seems to be more interested in the stunts put on by the Moscow circus people. Maoz called on Israel to hold a demonstration in protest against the tour. In front of the building where the circus performances were supposed to be held, activists began distributing leaflets. They managed to distribute only a couple of hundreds before police officers rushed in. Golda Yellen, Shabtai Betzalel Betzvi, and 3 other young Maoz activists were shot into the police car and driven to the station. They were treated like criminals. They were questioned for several hours. Their teeth were inspected and their criminal profiles were drawn up. Then they were accused of, wait for it, insulting a friendly country. They were released on a bail that night, but still. This Maoz operation caused a huge uproar in Israel, and Soviet embassy demanded that Israeli government must ban any and all civic activities in Israel to defense of the Soviet Jewry, and early booked appearances by the Leningrad Philharmonic Orchestra were cancelled. During the US President Richard Nixon's official visit to Moscow in May 1972, a demonstration and hunger strike organized by Maoz at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem gathered considerable publicity. Nearly 300 people, including new Jewish immigrants in Israel and members of various civic organizations, took part in the demonstration. In effect, the USSR, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and the KGB waged a veritable war against small civic organizations that relied solely on the work of volunteers. The Red Goliath against a small but steadfast biblical David. And Maoz this David of the second half of the 20th century, was victorious. I would like to show the picture of, this is in the center, it's Golda Yelin, the tiny woman who was enemy number one of Soviet Union. And near her, it's the wife of Avraam Shifrin, Eleanor. Yeah. Today, I cannot and I would not avoid the most popular question in the recent days, the case of the division Waffen-SS Galiciina. And immediately here is raising a question of archives, and especially the study of archives. I'm of course pointing to the archived report of the Shen's Commission. Here's the sum of the Commission conclusions. Number 56, the Galicia Division, 14th Grenadier Division of the Waffen-SS Galician, should not be condemned as a group. 57, the members of Galicia Division were individually investigated before being admitted to Canada. Number 58, accusation of war crimes against members of the Galicia Division were never proven, neither in 1950, when their first group was detained during immigration to Canada upon the request of serious organization, nor in 1984, when these accusations were renewed before the Commission. Number 59, because of the lack of the evidence of participation in or knowledge of war crimes, membership in Galicia Division alone cannot be ground to initiation judicial proceeding. Number 60, there is no basis for depriving members of the Galicia Division of Canadian citizenship or for deporting them, end quote. History is yesterday's politics, and today's events will become history tomorrow. We all need to study history very precisely before the judgment and conviction. I will quote the declassified SBU document from the KGB archive from 1985. The quote, all these materials forced the American authorities to form a special investigation department under the Ministry of Justice to identify and prosecute Nazi criminals, end quote. Among the aforementioned materials was a brochure called Lest We Forget. The different materials, such as this brochure, were created by communists of Ukrainian and Jewish origin in the United States. Along with this brochure and other materials like it were several propaganda documentaries created especially in Soviet Union. These KGB documents, it's also shed light on the fact that along with the United States, Canada also suffered a propaganda attack from the USSR. As a result, the Canadian government was forced to create the Jewish Commission. I continue to quote this KGB document. For this purpose, to the influential newspaper Toronto Star forwarded material called We Blame about the punitive activities of the Galician SS Division. This is in turn dealt a serious blow to attempts by the ruling circles to use foreign own in hostile activity against Soviet Union, forced Ukrainians to divert efforts and material resources to their defense, end quote. I would also like to show you unique collections of the poetry, starting with the book called Poetry in Concentration Camps. These are poems by Soviet political prisoners Boris Weil, Ivan Svetlichny, Evgen Sverstyuk, Vasil Stus, and many others, collected and published under the auspices of the Research Center for Prisons, Psych Prisons, and Forced Labor Concentration Camps in Soviet Union. The chairman of this center was Avraam Shifrin. Another book I want to show you, it's from your country, from United States. It's called Ukrainians and Jews Symposium. You can see, yeah. And
yes.
Yeah, this book is from archive, also from archive of Avraam Shifrin, published by Ukrainian Congress Committee of America in 1966. Among other materials, the book contains testimony of a lawyer, Volodymyr Benko, who from 1941 to 1944 defended in the courts of occupying German authorities Ukrainians accused of helping Jews. For example, Avraam Shifrin, the headman of the village of Vivsia in the Pinhaiti district, who hides a Jew. Throughout the efforts of this lawyer, the court acquitted the accused, although he had actually been hiding a Jew for several months. Lawyer Volodymyr Banko also testified about 26 other persons who either provided shelter or supplied food to Jews, for which they were arrested, tortured, and executed by Nazis. I will pay today's special tribute to the fate of the Greek Catholic pastor Avraam and his family, residents of the city of Freedom. The priest, his wife, and daughters Nadia and Tatiana were hanged in the local market for aiding and hiding Jews. The case of the Jew, Dr. Reichman and his family from the town of Pinhaiti, was also extremely revealing. All of them were hidden by villagers from the Golochey village, Pinhai district. Later, this doctor served in one of the units of the UPA. Unfortunately, none of the righteous people indicated by Dr. Banko in this book are recorded in the database at Israeli Yad Vashem Institute, because none of the rescued Jews was able to submit requests to honor the exploits of their saviors. In addition to his autobiographical book, The Fourth Dimension, I actually have a German edition of it handy, and I have, of course, Russian. And most important, that I received the translation into English from this archive, and I will do everything possible to publish this book in English. So, to addition to this book that I show, Avraam Shifrin, also compiler and author of a remarkable fact-filled book about Gulag. In 1980, a collection entitled The First Guidebook to Prisons and Concentration Camps of the Soviet Union, a compendium of approximately 2,500 addresses, maps, photographs, and eyewitnesses' testimonies, exposing the dirty and bloody face of the self-proclaimed freest country in the world. The book was published as a special present for the Olympics in Moscow. The cover of the first edition, I'll show you. I have handy, it's German and it's French edition. Very interesting book. And this is back. It was a reproduction because this is actual, like, it looks like a guidebook, the guidebook that Soviet Union produced. Thanks to this design rise, thousands of Western tourists attending the Olympics were able to enter the USSR with copies of this book, and thanks to which some visitors even managed to locate a few of the listed camps in the prisons, and several of which were situated in the heart of Moscow. The book caused a real sensation and was named Book of the Year in 1980 in Europe. Here are editions in Germany and French that I show, but it's interesting that it's same book, but it's in Finnish edition and a little bit different from what it was. It's interesting which year it was done. In 1981, so it was later published, but it's a very interesting book. And now, the cream on the cream, the cherry on the top, the discovery. Sorting out Shifrin's archive, I had found his manuscript of his last book titled The Labyrinths of KGB. Unknown to family, to public, and specialists, completely unknown. That manuscript has enormous amount of details about the KGB methods, tools, and techniques. Shifrin performed a great analysis of activities of KGB and its predecessors from 1970 to 1990s. The manuscript 17th and to the 1990s. The manuscript is in Russian and has about 250 pages. So archive is very important, and I will conclude my speech, and hopefully now we can discuss, we can review, and I will be glad to answer to your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alik. I offer our gratitude, and we're very honored to have you here and hear about those wonderful archival discoveries, that this is still possible, and there are enthusiasts like you who are doing that. I open panel to the questions of our viewers and hosts. Please ask your questions. You may put them in the chat or open your microphone and ask. Please, comments and questions.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, this is Carol. I'm a professor here at Marshall, and I teach mental health counseling. So very different from your area of inquiry. I was intrigued listening to you, hearing things that were happening in my lifetime from, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and thinking, if you have found these things in an archive from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, these are surely things that are informing policy and procedures in Russia right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is exceptionally intriguing given the war in Ukraine. And could information that you have right now be helpful to the people in Ukraine trying to be strategic in defending their country?
Strategic is a little bit different because it's more military stuff, but they have to understand what the future Russia tried to put on Ukraine. Actually, it's back. Once I just joking that time machine has been invented in Russia, but it's going not forward; it's going backwards. So now it's backward to the Soviet Union, back to USSR. It's what happened. It's what they tried to do. And Ukrainians, lots of Ukrainians, they remember from the speeches of grandfathers, great-grandfathers about the Holodomor, about this terrible terror and oppression that has been done. So they don't want to go to Soviet Union. That's why it's important. And it's important to provide the information because, like I said, this movie, this documentary is absolutely amazing. And it's how it has been done and what it has been filmed, because lots of people don't know try to forget about it, but we can't. And about mental health, it's very important because you know the story about Soviet psychiatrists that has been banned from the world society, especially because they did.
Everything has been twisted. Every single thing has been twisted. A second question occurred to me while you were answering, and thank you. That was a very helpful answer. I'm wondering if the information you have would be helpful to people writing to their legislators here in the United States to convince them to continue to support the fight for freedom in Ukraine. I know that there are people who are getting tired. They don't want to think about it anymore. They want to move on to the next thing. But I don't think people understand how existentially important this is. I mean, I'm just a counseling professor. I'm just a regular citizen here in the United States. I'm nobody special. But I see this, I see the enormous implications of what's happening, and it feels like nobody's paying attention. It's crazy.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. And I will tell you that Avraam Shifrin, I just given small pieces of his life, of his works, because he traveled a lot to United States. He gave lectures and he explained about Soviet Union, but it was back in 70s and 80s. So after that, everybody thought that it's reset, that it's now Russia is different, but it's not. You have to understand. You have to understand who came to the power, and you, like Putin by himself. You see, it's always problematic. They say something for inside and something from outside. And Putin said from for inside there is no such nonsense like a former KGB officer. It's his own word. It means there is no former. They always active and they always doing what they trained to do. We have to understand, and it's very dangerous. The tools they use, psychiatry, it's just one piece, but everything they, I have knowledge about, and it's always, I have knowledge, sorry, and jump a little bit. I have knowledge about more deeper history, about 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. In 1950s, actually 1957, the one of the escaper from the Soviet Union, the NKVD general Alexander Orlov, gives speech, and he explained how Soviet Union interrupt and what they did to United States back in 1930s and 1940s. Especially 30s because he deflected to the West in 1938. Yeah, so he gave, for example, interesting information that Soviet Union in 30s tried to flood the United States with the fake dollars, and they purchased Estonian bank, Soviets, and through the Estonian banks they tried to influence and pollute United States market with the fake dollars. It was captured. It was captured. It's not fairly and openly known, but it's so. We have to study history and archive. It's very important sources that we can find whatever. Maybe it's not. One of my books I called History and Convenient Truth. And then I thought, is any truth convenient? I don't think so. But still we have to face it. Otherwise, it's like you said, tired, maybe we can discuss, maybe we can agree. No, we have to fight. It's the only way. Because I lived in this country and Victor lived in this country. We have very bad experience and we know what is it. And we don't want that our children, our grandchildren, your grandchildren lived in such a hell that we used to live. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. This is always good to remind us and our children and grandchildren because so many decades pass, and as Alik just said, we are back to the USSR. The time machine is spinning in cycles. Anara.
Thank you very much for your remarkable presentation. It's a very relevant what we can see today. What has happened in reality that Putin and his allies reincarnated the KGB, made it even overpowerful, not only in Russia itself, but also in post-Soviet republics, in EU. Now they actually would like to control Africa, the Middle East, and so on. And I think that that's very important question for us. What should be done in order to prevent the spread of the influence of this overpowerful agency? Even during Soviet time, if you remember, there was certain counterbalance to prevent activism or super active actually control of KGB. There was a Communist Party, there were certain Soviet institutions. There was constantly struggle between different institutions. But now we can see that all Soviet institutions and Communist Party were dismantled, and we don't see any rivals, any agencies that could stop this FSB today, and who can actually eliminate or diminish power of FSB. What is your prediction and what could be done in the future in order to analyze this overpowerful agency? Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very nice and very good question. Thank you, Anar. I will tell you the most important is education. because we have to explain to people. I don't think many people in the United States knew the person that I will name now. I probably talk, Victor probably know, but not sure that. It was a person by name Herbert Romerstein. And he actually was head of the disinformation, who dismantled disinformation that Soviets spread. He was in a team of the Ronald Reagan administrations until his final year, and he fought the propaganda, disinformation, and Soviet influence. They tried to fill up United States with the agents, with the hidden agents, with the secret agents, and the most important agents of influence. Because still, I'm sure for 100% that the United States and other country, they just infected by agents of influence, which is try to change the minds. And now, like you mentioned, yeah, they try to poison this situation and try to poison people and saying either rumors or spread disinformation, like, for example, Mr. Carson doing and other, because it's poisoning people and it's poisoning meanings of the people. And they thought maybe Ukraine is not so good country. Maybe it's really terroristic and they invent some chemical weapons. Maybe we have to destroy it, and Putin maybe is good guy. So we have to fight. The only way to fight disinformation is give the information. The only fight against the lies, it's truth. But we have to educate. We have to spread this knowledge and explain. For example, in this situation that started in Canada about Division Галичина, because it started back, like I provided the information back in 1985, and it was inspired by the Soviet Union. And now we have to provide and we have to pick up the information and explain, because it's very important now to understand that all the false slogans by Russians, they fighting Nazis in Ukraine, it's fake. And we have to find the roots and destroy these roots. It's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alik. More questions from the panel or viewers, please. Katerina, others, please.
Well, I learned a lot, and I'm not smart enough to ask a question, but I do have some reactions to your beautiful and so eloquently presented. I like everyone else, your description of the film, it just even the description of it is incredibly moving and powerful. The images that you shared, the manuscript you discovered, 250 pages. I mean, the wealth of information that you are exploring, what a great contribution that will be someday, in addition to your already great contributions of your scholarship.
Thank you.
There's a lot of little links between things that you're connecting lots of important pieces of information. For example, I had no idea that Vasil Stus's work was in a volume edited by Shifrin. That's amazing, and how fitting. That makes a lot of sense for those two great men to have worked, collaborated, or been part of the same project. The touching story told about the priest and his wife and their two daughters, Nadia and Tatiana. I mean, just I'm very grateful for your ability to put big, major ideas, intellectual context, and incredibly personal glimpses of what people experience all into one beautiful presentation. So thank you. My question is actually very, very, very simple. You mentioned the Jewish practice of placing an empty chair at a table in awkward memory of those. Does that still continue? I mean, that seems like it seems like a very beautiful, beautiful practice.
It's beautiful practice, and Mao's, to be honest with you, and it's very sad to tell the truth, but I have to tell the truth. Because in Israel, not many people knew what is it Mao's and what Mao's did, and who is Golda Yele, and who is Avraam Shifrin, and who is Eleanor Shifrin. Yes, unfortunately.
That's a surprise. That's a surprise that they're.
Yeah, I was very surprised. Even the political prisoners who were with the Shifrin, I heard such things that it was just upsetting. Because I said, how you can tell that Shifrin told the stories, not truths, if you didn't study the documents as KGB. His sentence and documents that KGB has about him. How you can spread it? Oh, I didn't know it. I told, to be honest with you, I appreciate what you did, but you have to understand what you're saying too, because it's very important. Your word is very important for people. They listen, especially for you, Katerina.
Oh, Blazenishi, Patriarch Yosef Slipi. Oh my goodness, that is. I have that book. That is a lovely.
You have this book, and now I have two from the Shifrin's archive, and letters from the Slipi, and personally to Shifrin.
Oh, that is so fitting. Thank you. Thank you. That's actually just lifted my heart. Thank you for letting me see that. I will also pass this on to my father. Watches these programs and recording, and he will be very, very, very joyous to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, they have very good relations, and actually, Avram and Eleonora, they visited Patriarch in Rome. After they were freed, they were married, but Patriarch was still in Rome, still alive, and they visited them and have good relation. They have good memories about. Another person I did mention, but I believe your father knew, it's Horopovi.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
I have also had the letter of the Horopovi, which he sent to Soviet authorities because he demanded the freedom. And Horopovi, it was a big friend of Shifrin. Shifrin defended him. And I have amazing letter when Shifrin wrote to Ukrainians when Horopovi passed away. It was something. It was something. It's heart touching. It's mind touching. It's absolutely. And I knew who is Horopovi was. It's amazing. So Shifrin has a special folder, special box, which is script on it, Ukraine. And he has amazing, not just Ukraine, because he has amazing contact with Lithuanians, and they also appreciate his works. And they also sit in with Shifrin. Shifrin is an amazing person. Now it's here. I may be crazy about him, but I know what he did and what he started. It's not everything. He in this manuscript, it's so amazing things. He just described his childhood. He described how he worked because he smuggled information from Soviet Union to United States. He even just imagine 1953, tough time, and Shifrin incognito entered the United States Embassy. And they have conversation in the United States Embassy. And Shifrin said, do you have special room that we can have a chat? Why? We have specialists from United States. They verify every day. They didn't find some microphones. He said, is this building built by you? No, Soviets. If Soviets build this building, it means you have microphones.
Wow.
And he insists, Shifrin insists that while they talking, because they talking business, very serious, to put two radios and TV on just to diminish, just increase the noise and diminish the understanding. Wow. And then he also was able to escape from the United States Embassy because he didn't know that they already looking for him. It's amazing person.
Truly incredible. And I'm so grateful for you educating us and our listeners on him. And I look forward to learning more about him. This is great. Thank you. You mentioned a colleague, last name Demko. Is the first name Igor by any chance?
Demko, you mean the lawyer?
It's somebody you cited. Oh, I thought I may have misheard. I may have misheard the name.
No. It was Demko. It was testimonials here. It's Volodymyr Bemko, not Demko. Bemko.
All right, I misheard. I'm so sorry. I misheard, and I thought it was someone that we had connected with before.
No. It's from this amazing book. It's Demko. Give the actually nobody knew about this book, and I found lots of information about it. Lots of information about the Ukrainians and Jews, and it's 1966. It's 1966, and it started there. So when they say Ukrainians and Jews were separate, they just united recently. I said, no, you have to search the story. You have to search the archive, and you find the situation is different because Ukrainians always try to be connected with Jews. That's what I told in my last year panel about Petlura. It started there, and about the Черно Сотня.
Thank you so much for the important work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alik. Do we have any more questions from the panel or viewers, please? We're close to the end of our program, but we can take more questions if anyone asks. Alik opens for us, as always, this same time machine, which runs counter to the Soviet and KGB time machines. So we have this dive into history to find the truth, and hopefully your presentation will be watched by many who want to learn. Too many years have passed, decades and decades. I always compare what we see and experience to the Second World War, and time seems to flow much, much slower these days, unlike events. It's incredible to think that it was 32 years since Soviet Union fell apart, and what we are seeing is still the same process continuing, and two generations are passing. Any more questions, please? If not, I will thank Alik Gomelsky of Toronto, Canada, with his wonderful talk about Avraam Shifrin and his archive and his times. Dr. Shrey, please say a few words in Ukrainian to our viewers who hopefully will watch us.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Avraam Slava.